Hello, everyone. Today, I am so excited to be joined by Simonetta Carr, who was born in Italy and has lived and worked in many different cultures. She worked for a while as an elementary school teacher and then taught her own 8 children for many years. Besides writing books, which I think our family probably owns at least a dozen of them, she has contributed to newspapers and magazines and has translated the works of several authors from English into Italian. So, sort of, I guess, like a reverse Dorothy Sayers. Presently, she lives in San Diego with her husband, Thomas, and their daughter. So thank you for chatting with us today. If you want to just, I know I read your bio, but if you want to tell us a little bit about yourself and your family, I would love to hear.
Well, what you said. And so I was born in Italy. I lived there I left Italy in, I think it was 1976, I think. A long time ago. And my husband is American. So first we traveled around a bit. That's why it says I lived in different cultures. My husband was teaching English as a second language, and it was a way for us to travel too. So we lived in different countries, and I had kids a little bit everywhere. And we came to America in 1996, and then we stayed, and we live in San Diego, as it says there. My kids are all grown up. Even my daughter is, I only have one daughter. She's the last one, and she's with us, but she's 22, so she's grown up too. So, and then that's it. I started to write around, what was it? It was around 2008, I think. I started to write books. It was for Calvin's 500th anniversary. So I think that was, the book came out in 2009, if I'm not mistaken, and I might be.
It's like trying to remember the birth dates of all your children. I get them
I
mixed up.
know, yeah.
Well, one of the reasons I really wanted to chat with you is because church history is something that's very important in my family. We love to read the stories of our church family of the past to our children. And I wanted to kind of talk to you, since you've invested so much time in writing about church history. Why do you think it's important for children to learn church history, and what can they and we learn by reading the biographies of men and women of the faith?
Well, I think first thing is I don't think church history is emphasized enough in our churches. So that's probably one reason. I think we need to know the history of, as you said, our family, because in reality it's our family from the start. But then also to understand why we believe what we believe right now, because true, but many things have been developed throughout the centuries. It depends on, on the emphasis that each century gave on different doctrines. So we can learn a lot, and otherwise we end up, like they say, to reinvent the wheel if we don't learn from our past. And myself, I don't think I knew much about church history before. When I don't remember when, but at one point in our church, there was an intern who started to teach church history for Bible studies. And it was the first time I learned a lot of things that I never heard before. And I was thinking, why don't we teach this to our children? And I was homeschooling at the time, and I was pretty much using the curriculum where history as the priority. You take history and you developed everything else around it. And so I was teaching them about history and including the history of science and art, trying to include everything in the curriculum. And I didn't have anything for theology, not just church history, but like really theology, our thoughts, like how did the doctrines develop throughout the centuries. And so I started to do that with my kids. And then I got the idea of started to write books because I didn't find them in the library. I didn't find the books I wanted. And I think a lot of books are born this way. When you don't find what you want, then you try to do it. And actually, originally, I wanted this intern to write the books. And then when he didn't do it, then I did. Yeah. I don't know if I answered your question. Maybe I answered some other questions.
Yeah, no, that's perfect. Yeah, I was just thinking about how church history, reminds us where we came from, but it also kind of is guardrails, right? So because there's no new error. Chances are, if you think you've come up with some new idea, it was already dealt with at a church council,
right.
And even our young children can get excited about the stories when we're talking about biographies, because they're like people, right? They realize this isn't just something that is like, not that systematic theology is boring, because it isn't either, but for a child to connect with, it's not just a list of ideas. These are real people. I remember when my daughter was very, very little, we had been reading some of your biographies for children, and we had like a bunch of people coming over for a meal. Like I was probably running around frantic trying to prepare, and Emma was like, well, it's not like Lady Jane Grey. We still don't have as many people as she had to take care of at her house. So, sometimes they're picking up even when we don't realize it.
Yeah.
Well, as we read these stories to our children, we're dealing with fallen men and women, right? Because they are human, like we are, saved by grace, just like we are. And so how can we encourage our children to admire and look up to and learn from these heroes of the faith, while also dealing with their foibles and their weaknesses and their blind spots?
Well, I think one way is just not to hide them, because this is something I've seen in biographies in the past, especially for children, but surely for everybody too. There has been a tendency in the past to gloss over all the mistakes and just to emphasize what's good, which I understand, to an extent. But if you do that all the time, then eventually children will find out some of these mistakes and they'll say, you didn't tell me the truth. And then also, I think it kind of gives unrealistic expectations for our own lives, because we can't be faultless. So, how come all these people in the past are so good and I just can't be that way? So it's both comforting, actually, to know the other people went through the same struggles and had some similar sins and had to fight against them. And also it's more realistic and helps children to see, yes, there's the good and the bad, and they understand that we're speaking honestly to them.
Yeah, these people aren't Jesus, right?
No,
and
right.
It's scripture itself. You think about the great heroes of the Old Testament. Scripture doesn't shy away from telling us the good and the bad.
That's true.
So, and that kind of leads to the next part of my question. It can be a danger when we're reading the Bible to take these stories about men and women and turn them into just sort of moral tales. I could see that being, a potential downside or danger as we're studying church history with our kids. So how can we really keep Christ as the center of our church history studies?
Well, as you said, it's related to the other question, because if you are honest about these people and you show, they did this, which was really good, and then, in this area they didn't do so well, then you just explain how whatever they did, that it was God that allowed it, just like it is in our lives. When we do anything good, we can just thank God for it, and the children can understand that, I think.
Yeah.
It's the same when you read Bible stories.
God could use Balaam's donkey. He can use me too.
Yes.
Well, besides reading books about church history, what are some other ways we can encourage a love of the church, both the church in the past, the church in the present, and the church in the future? How can we encourage this love of the church in our children?
I think church history is a good way to do that. There's many other ways, of course, like going to church every week. That helps a lot, because, and I don't know who your audience is, but I know for myself and my kids, being in a church where the children are included in the service, that helps a lot, because for a while we went to a church where they were divided for adults went to the actual service, and then the children had their own groups, and it's so much better when they're included, when they learn that we're all one family, when they learn to talk to anybody, not just their own peers, but to older people and generations. And then, yes, church history helps, because then you see the church as a family that continued together throughout history, and how God preserved it no matter what, in spite of all the mistakes and everything. Yeah, I think both of these things help.
I love hearing all the noises and the cries and the parents saying, "Be quiet, sit still." That's such a joy to me, because it's like we are one body, and to have the children in the worship, that they know this belongs to them. It's the same God, the same Savior. It's what a precious gift. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit about what it's like being an author. This is very fascinating. So, how do you choose? I'll just start with this question. How do you choose who you're going to write about next?
Right. Well, as I said, it started unexpectedly, because I was writing here and there, like as you said in the little bio. I was writing articles. I did translations even before. I always liked to write, but I never thought I would write a book. And then when this intern would write the book I wanted, and I sent the proposal to a few publishers. I didn't expect much, and every time I received a no, it was like, oh yeah, of course. But then one person said yes. And I know. And it was the perfect publisher, because I'm still with them, and they're wonderful. And they turned my books into something I never expected, because I just wrote the text basically, and they turned into this amazing thing that now I have to keep up with the standards. I have to I normally find the pictures, and I direct the illustrator, but I'm really happy the books turned out really well. It's scary too. I'm actually I've been writing for a long time, a book on the whole of church history. I normally don't say this. I think you're probably the first person I'm telling publicly, because it's so scary. I'm sure it's not, it has a lot of mistakes, but you know, I try my best. Again, I saw a need for it, and I studied, and I got a lot of experts to read it, and I'm sure there will still be mistakes. I was thinking the publisher can have a few blank pages at the end so the kids can write their corrections. But at least it's a start. So it's scary in that sense, but it's good. It's good to see the children like it. And I've always been surprised when children like my books. But I remember they've been translated in Indonesian too, and somebody told me in Indonesia they're selling so well, and I didn't understand why, and they don't understand it either, because they said they don't have all these cartoonish pictures that a publisher would think children will like, but then they like them anyway. So, and so it's like that. It's just for me, it's not, my life has not changed. Just I write, and I'm surprised that people like the books, but I'm happy because of the message of what the books are trying to say. How I decide, well, the publisher gave me such a long list that I told them, well, you know, I'm going to be like in my 90s writing books the way what they're expecting from me. But I try to keep to my original vision of sticking with theologians as much as possible, because I'm taking this chance to explain, like you were saying, to explain doctrines to the children, you know, foundational doctrines. But if you notice, they're like, probably there'd be maybe in one page in the whole book, there's a doctrine, and it's pretty condensed. And I spent more time probably trying to see how to word that part and all the rest. But the rest is just to help them understand that, you know, these doctrines that we believe, they didn't just pop out of nowhere, or it's not like people sat down. Some people have that picture, that image in mind of a bunch of old men sitting at a meeting and saying, okay, we're going to believe this. and that's not how things work in church history. So if you have a biography, books that allow me to bring up some of our doctrines.
Yeah. And so then once you have picked the person you're going to write about, what's the process for researching and gathering sources, I guess?
Yeah, I pick a person. I ask the publisher to confirm, and they usually say yes. Sometimes we discuss it a bit, because they're also concerned about sales. So if I mention somebody who's completely unknown, they say, okay, can you sandwich it between two famous people? I say, okay, I'll do that. And then usually once I propose somebody, I have researched, because then I'm convinced that they will be a good person to include. And then I start buying a bunch of books and learning more about that person. And normally I just write one draft fairly quickly after I know all the facts. And then I revise it throughout time. And then I send it to different people to check. And then I have to find photos, and then I have to talk to the illustrator. So it's a lot of work, even just the illustrations, because I might give him some ideas, you know, maybe this picture. And then he starts asking questions like, well, what were they wearing, or what what was where were the buildings like at a particular time, or I don't know. So sometimes we do the research together. Sometimes he researches too, but I do some research too, and it's kind of funny. Sometimes I contact experts and I ask them all these crazy questions, and they say, I don't know either. Nobody has ever asked those questions. Yeah, it's fun.
It does sound fun, especially the buying lots of books part. I would be really good at
Yeah.
that part.
No, you should see how many I bought for the church history book.
I can't even imagine how fun.
Uh-huh.
Well, you are gathering and working so hard getting all of this information, all these details, but then you're having to figure out what you're going to include and what you're going to leave out.
Yeah.
Because obviously you're writing a book for children at the end of the
Right.
day, not the,
Yeah.
great work on a particular author, with all the information. So how do you choose what information to put in and what to leave out?
Well, for biographies, I try to make the biographies simple for children. So I also, besides trying to make it interesting, I'm concerned that the children will actually like it and not get bored halfway through. So yeah, I try to do that. And like I said, the doctrinal part, I choose one thing that I want to emphasize for each author. And then when I talk about that, I talk about it in context. This happened and it made him think, and then this is how he came up with that. And I do it as concisely as possible, so that then the story goes on and the children don't get lost in that. But hopefully they get it, the one small part.
Yeah.
And it depends, there are some authors, some of the authors I wrote about that you have volumes and volumes and volumes of books. I wrote one about Spurgeon, for example. I mean, I could read about Spurgeon for a lifetime. There's so much stuff out there by him and about him. And then there are some that you don't know anything about. I wrote a book about, who was it? Irenaeus. And I really wanted to write it. Even my publisher said, how are you going to find anything about him? Because we know what he said. We have one book written by him, which is awesome. And I recommend it. But nothing else. But I really wanted to write about him because his book against the Gnostics, or against Gnosticism, I shouldn't say against the Gnostics. He actually loved them. He said he loved them more than they loved themselves. But yeah, against the Gnosticism, we still have Gnosticism around us. So that's why I wanted to write it. But I didn't know anything, and there's nothing about him. We don't know anything. We don't even know when he was born or when he died. We know a few things. He studied under Polycarp, and he went to Rome, and then he went to Lyon, and he was a pastor there for a while. He wrote a book. That's it. So anyway, if you get that book, I think it still has 64 pages like every other book. So you can understand what I did for that book. I really had to come up with a lot of other stuff to include.
I think that was actually when my husband was reading aloud a few Sundays ago to my little guy. So I'll have to go and look at it more closely.
Yes. Look at the timeline. It's like this long.
And the rest we just don't know. Well, it's better to say we don't know than to make stuff up, right?
Right. Yeah.
Well, from the time when you sort of have picked your topic and have written your draft, you've done your research, you've revised until we actually can get the book in our hand. What is there sort of an average length of time that takes, or?
I'm not sure. There is an average, but I didn't really think about the. There's just a few months, I think, a year at the most. I don't really remember. They go pretty fast, Reformation Heritage, compared to other publishers. They do. So, yeah, I send it. Then we have an editor that reads it. I think a few people read it. And then she makes some suggestions, send them back to me. I send it back to her. Usually that part doesn't take very long. I mean, it's a short book. These are short books, you know. So, and then that's it. And then they have to do the typesetting and send it to the printer. It's not, I think the longest part is writing and finding photos and working with Illustrator. But yeah. It's fun. Yeah.
So you mentioned that you're working on an overview of church history. Are there any other books that you're working on right now?
Yeah, because that one, I've probably been working on it for about 5 years. I don't know, it feels like I've been working on for 20 years. So yeah.
That's a big topic.
It's been a big job, and hopefully it came out okay. But yeah, they really want to publish it next year. They actually wanted to publish it this year, but I told them no way. There's no way I can finish it on time. So I think next year. And it was supposed to be, initially it was supposed to be for young readers, and then I think now it turned out to be more for preteens, because there's just so much in church history that if I kept it too simple, I would have to miss too many important things. So it's more for preteens, I think, but hopefully other kids will like it too. And but then my series goes on. So this time I'm trying somebody who's really unknown here in the Western world, but at least he's a man. He was born in Nigeria, and I don't know, I might mispronounce his name. So, but Biancato, the last name Cato, and he was, I think he was a Gresham Machen of Africa. This is my definition of him. I haven't heard anybody else giving this definition, so maybe I'm mistaken. But he, at a time when Africa was becoming independent, and the various nations were declaring independence, and they were rediscovering their Africanness and their traditions, and he provided a balance, I think, by saying, you know, don't go too far, don't go to an extreme of throwing the baby out with the bathwater. You know, it's like, yes, there were mistakes made by, I mean, even missionaries didn't always act correctly. Some, you know, the majority did. I think the majority of missionaries went for the right reasons, and they really went for the love of Christ. But some of them didn't behave well, or they, some of them didn't make enough of an effort to include the African cultures in it. So there's a lot that they could have done better, yes. But then the gospel, you don't throw away the gospel, he said, you know. And he said something that really impressed me, because he said, you know, the gospel is something that was revealed, right? So the Greeks didn't have it, the Jews didn't have it, the Americans didn't have it, the Africans didn't have it, because it's about the person, you know, Jesus Christ. So that really impressed me. And basically, I think that's in the nutshell what he was teaching. And he was also teaching the importance of scriptures, being faithful to scriptures. And he didn't live very long yet, so that's another one. He died young, so there's not much to say, but I think that's enough. I found enough to do it, and it's amazing because I got to talk, or not that much, but to send the manuscript to his son. Oh. So his son read it, and so I feel better. I feel like, okay, at least I didn't say anything wrong about his life. But yeah, I'm very excited about this. Yeah, I think it's very important, and it's important for our children also to see, because now the majority of Christians are in Africa and Asia. So it's important for them to be aware of this.
Yeah, I think that's something just church history in general too reminds us that, like you were saying, the gospel is about Jesus Christ. And so right. there's a distinction between a cultural outworking of right. the church and the church, right? The body of Christ.
Yeah.
I am a member of the Orthodox Presbyterian Church, which was founded by Gresham Machen. So that calling him the Gresham Machen of Africa, I'm like, oh, I'm going to need to get this book for sure.
Well, that's my impression. Yes. But, yeah. Well, yeah, but what you said is really true, because what I was saying about missionaries sometimes not behaving correctly. Sometimes they didn't mean any harm, but besides telling people to follow the gospel, they said you have to dress this way, and you have to sing this way, and play this kind of music, and do this and that. Basically you have to become Western in order to be a Christian. And so it's important, because then of course many Africans said, no, this is not right, we don't have to. But then again, like I was saying, don't throw the baby out with the bath water. You can throw away all the Western outside what's not important, but you have to keep the gospel the way it is. It's an announcement that came from God. It's not something that any man invented, and you just cannot change it.
Yeah, amen, definitely. Well, you have had this wonderful opportunity to read about so many amazing men and women over the years. But I was wondering if you could tell us, maybe pick one man and one woman, or just one or two people that have especially struck you or that you really enjoyed learning about, and tell us a little bit about them and why you were fascinated by them.
Yeah, well, for men, I think I mentioned already two of my favorites, because usually the last one is always my favorite. But yeah, I really had a lot of fun studying about Biancato and Anselm. No, sorry, Irenaeus was also one of my favorites because of what he wrote. I just love what he wrote. And sometimes we don't know, but what these people wrote, it's not as difficult to read as we imagine. It depends. John Owen can be difficult. Actually, I didn't find it as difficult as other people found it, because I'm Italian. So we have long sentences in Italy. and he has long sentences. But anyway, yeah, those two. Anselm was also fun to write about. I really enjoyed writing about him. Sometimes we only know little bits and pieces about these people. Anselm, if we know anything about him, we know that he was, we either know him for the Cordeo Sono, why did God become man? or we know him for his struggle against the King of England. But we don't know everything. And I found it fascinating to just see his life, just how he lived. And he was so down to earth and so simple. And just reading about him, I really enjoyed it. His everyday struggles. And I think on the cover I have Anselm chasing away hunters that wanted to kill a hare. I thought, oh, this is so nice. Children will like it so much. And so, yeah, and little funny things. Sometimes in the Middle Ages, you find a lot of funny stories. How he was at a meeting and it just, a very, very important meeting, and he basically just fell asleep and and everybody else was trying to decide some very important things. He was just asleep. So I like that part too. There's a picture about him sleeping too. So yeah, I had fun with him, but more or less all the ones every time I write a book, my last one is always the favorite. And for women, I don't know, in that particular series, maybe my favorite was Marie Durand, but maybe again was because I had to do so much research about her, and there's not anything out in English yet. I heard that somebody in Australia is writing a book about her in English with all her letters. A friend of mine tried to do the same thing. We had a bit of problems with the copyright of the letter, so I kind of stopped. But yeah, because I did so much research about her, whenever I do a lot of research, I kind of get very close to the people, because you learn not just about what they did and what they wrote, but you learn about their daily lives and, you know, their feelings, their thoughts, and so you get very close. And then I just really enjoyed writing about Marie Durand. And then I don't know if you know, but I wrote a book about women in church history, but that's not for children. It's called Questions Women Asked.
Okay.
I had a lot of fun writing that book. That book. It's very short. Like, no, the book might not be short. My husband was surprised. It's really big. But it's, I think it's 31 women. No idea why 31. It just happened. It goes from Marcella, I think. There's the first one. And it goes all the way to a Chinese person, Jeanette Lee. So it goes from one to the other, and it's the whole scope of church history, but it's different. It's questions women asked, so it's all questions. Different women and questions they had, either questions they had, or in some cases it was questions that people asked them. But even if people asked them, then it made them think, and they replied. So that in that book, there's a lot of women that I felt very close. At the end, I said, I just feel like I have 31 new friends.
Well, they're your sisters, right? You'll meet them one
Yes,
day.
they really are.
I will have to add that to my book list. I have not read that one. I didn't recognize that title. So I love too that it's a broader scope of all church history. I read one last year on Reformation women, clicking on my shelf, by Rebecca Van Dudewaard, I believe. And that brought up a lot of unfamiliar names to me, which was always fun to kind of learn something new. But
well, this one you're gonna find a lot of unfamiliar names too.
I'm excited. Oh, that's great. One of my favorite women from church history is Jenny Geddes. She threw a stool at the pastor who was preaching heresy. So I just always love that story. I don't know anything else about her, but she cared about.
I don't think anybody knows anything about her.
She cared about the gospel.
Yes.
Well, the final question I have for you, I know we've been focusing on church history and books and reading and things, but you did home educate your 8 children. And one of the last questions I'm asking people is just to share their tips for helping the homeschool day run smoothly. So what did you learn as you look back on it with a little perspective?
Like, as I said in my email to you, I said, I don't know if I can answer that question. Partially because my kids are all grown up. Second, because I think when we, at my age, we look back, I don't know if we want to share any tips. I was talking to a couple at church just a few weeks ago, and I said, there's so many books written by young mothers with so many tips how to raise young kids, lots of very good suggestions. There's nothing from people our age. One of the other mothers said, if we ever wrote a book, it would be a very short book that would say, trust God. So basically that's, because kids grow up and then you don't know, in some cases, you see some good fruits. In some cases, it's like, oh, where did my teaching go? We are all different. People are different, and God works differently in everybody's life. So, but I think in your question, you said what was helping the homeschool day run smoothly. And I think with us, it was more that we were pretty relaxed about it. One thing that helped me, when I was traveling, we used different books and we were in touch with different groups. But when we came to America, I homeschooled my kids through the school system, the public school system, because it was very convenient. And I could still buy my own books and do other things, but every 2 weeks I would report what they did, and then they would give me, they gave me a program to follow, and their program is very, very easy. The public schools, the program is very easy compared to what we were used to. But that was great for me because I said, okay, this is all they're expecting. We actually did all the tests that we were supposed to do, the work for 2 weeks. We did it in 1 day. Then we had the rest of the time just to explore what we liked. And that kind of helped me to realize, because I think, I don't know if I'm the only one. I tend to be a perfectionist. I have to always, well, God helps me very much not to be, knocks me down enough. But yeah, but I was always trying to do more with my kids. And then when I realized, oh, this is all they want. And then we had fun, and my kids still look back and they remember all the fun things we did, the books we read together, we visited different places, and all the things you cannot do in a school. And I think that's what made it run smoothly. Just have fun and don't try too hard. But I don't know if it works for everybody. I know some parents might have different goals. Our goals was just to get them to learn, but mostly to enjoy. I wanted them to enjoy learning, because that's something, if you enjoy learning, then you grow up and you continue to learn. And if you don't enjoy it, you can learn a lot, and then it's easy to forget. So I forgot the titles of the books I just read. So
Yeah, I think so often we put so much stress on ourselves as homeschool moms, like we've got to do everything right and make sure we don't miss anything with our kids, and we've taught them
Yeah,
everything they need to learn. And well, one, that's impossible. And two, like you were saying, if we can just give them a love for learning and teach them
yes.
how to learn, it doesn't matter if they don't actually know every single thing in
Right.
the whole world. They'll
Yeah.
always be learning the rest of their life.
I think it's the excitement. I think even if you're a public school teacher, if you're excited, your kids will be excited. But I inherited some of this from my parents. They were both teachers, and they were both very excited about what they were teaching. My father taught math and in school, and then he taught me how to add and subtract and multiply when I was really young. And this was not, homeschooling was not even around at that time. But we had tiles on our walls in the kitchen, and he put little stickers on the tiles of, I think it was like Mickey Mouse characters or something. And doing that, we would do a square, and he taught me how to multiply by doing that, 3 by 4, and you count the squares. And I didn't even know what I was doing, but I learned that way. And he was so excited if I did it right. And we would just do that at the kitchen table because it was on the kitchen tiles. And I still remember that. Yeah. So I think what they taught me was good, because I'm still learning. I still love learning. So
Yes, and now you get to share what you're learning with us in your books.
yes.
Well, this has been such a wonderful conversation. Thank you for chatting today. Can you tell people where they can find you around the internet?
Okay, so well, if you go to Reformation Heritage Books, you can find most of my books there. And then I have a website, but it's not updated. So maybe this will will inspire me to update it. And it's Simonetta-Carr.com, because Simonetta Carr without the little dash was already taken. And then how I'm on Facebook, Twitter, different things.
I will have the links to all of those things over in the show notes for this episode at humilityanddoxology.com. So I will chat with you later. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.